There's been a distinct change in action films. Within the industry, commentators have noticed changes in what defines an action-oriented film and trends within the films that are made. Nearly all can agree that if we were to look at most action films produced in the early 2000s to 2010s, even early 2020s, they are comparatively different than what we had in the 1970s and 1980s and even into the 1990s. Are there changes? Has the action film genre changed due to social and political trends? What's going on exactly with action films? Has the genre changed? Are they different? Has nothing changed? Now, of course, there are some good films made from 2000 through 2020, but there is no denying the fact that some things have changed when modern films have been compared to prior decades. Why? There are possible reasons. The heroes that the movies are based on. A huge trend in the 1980s in particular were the fact that many of the heroes like Dutch from Predator and John from Rambo were maverick fringe elemental aspects of a pseudo-military force. Both Dutch and John were related to the American military. It dealt with the trauma and the fact that the heroes were flawed but still relatable to the audience watching. Aspects of the film were over the top and slightly outrageous given the plots of the films, but the studios kept the idea fresh throughout the film and marketed it with a little bit of fun and aggression. These aspects kept it serious without being too much of a concentrated effort, which kept more themes from the plot to be remembered by the audience during and after the film. Action films from the 2000s through 2020s dealt with the super trained assassin like Jason Bourne with traumatic issues with his past, but still won't let that get to him if you don't look at the lifetime of loyal, I'll repeat that, loyal operative in service to the CIA or FBI, Marines or SEALs with distinguished service, or even some super secret governmental organization and is fluent in multiple languages and could be a monster computer hacker like Ethan Hunt in his later film installments. Ethan and Jason are different from Dutch and John simply because of the fact that the films during the early and mid 2000s had these super assassins going out for trouble, looking for trouble on purpose, arguably. Dutch was just a major who got caught up in an alien attack in Central and South America. John was a traumatized war veteran who ended up having a vendetta against the government and country that took advantage of him and the fellow soldiers of his generation. These were regular men who had training and experience but got caught up in situations beyond their control. Ethan and Jason had more experience, arguably, and took whatever came across them and knew exactly what to do, where to go, and who to stop. The Bourne Effect. When the original Jason Bourne films were released, commentators noticed that the way the films were presented and the aspect of the cinema relating to it, since there had not been a major war in American history for decades, arguably, realistically by that point in time, they focused on corruption of government and turned it into a main plot for the film. These films were made on purpose with intentions of being blockbusters in theaters within America and internationally. Big budget films easily pushed smaller budget films out of contention and the quality suffered. It's also been said that the acting and the premise of the Bourne films became more outrageous as the films went on, and even though the films in the 1980s were somewhat lacking in terms of special effects and technology, the acting and attention to detail instead of computer graphic imagery more to account for anything and everything in terms of effects. Budget and revenue for films. Expounding upon what it now takes to make a quote-unquote action film is the amount of money that might be allocated towards the film. Most of the 1980s and even the 1990s films had small to medium-sized budgets at the time. Nothing compared to amounts of money needed for films in the early 2000s 2010s and 2020s. Example: Rambo was released in 1982 and had a budget of 15 million US dollars, and it made back a little over 125 million US dollars. Predator was released in 1987 on a budget of roughly anywhere from 15 to 18 million US dollars, and it made back a little more than 98 million US dollars. These were all huge successes based on films with minimal budget, but made up for it with improvisations, good acting, and just fantastic original imagination. Modern films need substantial funding to even get back an American domestic showing. Combine this with the sad reality that the films now need to have an Asian audience in mind to earn extra income. This is why the plots in the Transformer films had scenes set in Asia for Asian audience to relate to more. In America or Europe, this doesn't exactly make much sense in terms of plot, but only Asian audiences who might be watching the film would understand these references. As a result of the scene location and diversified audience, you need to invest more. It's not just a New York scene with McClane, or a Central American jungle with Dutch, or the Vietnamese rainforest with John, or even the futuristic spacecraft with Ripley. It's Inglorious China to pander to the Chinese audiences, and that reality needs more money. With this in mind, budgets need to be more and more substantial. So, as a result, if a budget is higher than the income, there needs to be an even higher amount to actually make a profit. It's not even about breaking even in terms of revenue for a said movie to be successful. There needs to be an assured amount of money that's pure profit. Nothing less, but always more. If we look to the original Predator and Rambo films as examples, a budgeted film of anywhere from 10 to 90 million US dollars can make a decent profit in terms of ticket sales. What is considered a success in terms of a film with relation to the budget and revenue earned from ticket income are completely different in the 2020s than in the 1980s. We're increasingly seeing films with budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and revenue needing to be even more than that for just breaking even, not going even into the profit margin of ticket sales for a said film. Technology of filmmaking. Ironically, everything now is so computerized that it's cheaper to use computer graphics than to hire people to do the job. Some might assume that hiring a team of experienced makeup professionals to make costumes for actors and actresses to wear on the set of the film, alongside mechanical engineers for animatronics in the background of the scene, is cheaper than to have a few people digitally create an entire universe on screen for an audience to see. But it's cheaper for technology, and as a result of the quality of modern films in terms of the action genre has declined. Audiences internationally have complained about the unrealism of computers within modern movies, and the lack of a real touch that makeup, cosmetics, and prosthetics can give a film and its presentation to audiences. Ironically, many aspects of film that have been in existence and practice for over 100 years are still better than cutting-edge technology, stunts, or too much of them. Actors and actresses in films used to not exactly be afraid of getting their hands dirty for those extravagant scenes. These scenes were often painstakingly shot and captured to breathtaking effect. Of course, there were some shots or scenes that were too dangerous for the said actor or actress, and stunt doubles were naturally used for those scenes. In modern Hollywood, a number of actors and actresses are not exactly up for the sense of danger and actually putting their body in potential harm's way when in decades gone by, actors have actually been injured on set and have had to take time out of filming because of a broken or sprained or damaged limb or part of their body. Some of the scenes within films where they got injured were spectacular and realistic, especially because of the fact that later on, people actually learned that the actor or actress actually got injured during the shot, and the camera kept rolling and recorded the footage. This was the ultimate aspect of realism. That was the ultimate experience in watching a film. You were generally surprised because you saw something that was actually truly real. In modern films, you rarely see that. Professionals in Hollywood are now so afraid of being harmed during a scene, they use stunt doubles all the time, possibly whenever the chance comes for it, whenever something might call for a double. As a result, in modern action scenes, the said stunt is done quickly, not because of the shot of the scene, but so you, the viewer, can't exactly or necessarily see the reality that the star isn't doing the scene. It's a double. Plenty of times you can see action scenes back to back, and the action is so quick you don't know what's happening because the doubles are on the screen, and the cuts and edits shake everything from your perception, so you don't know anything. All you just see are blurs. Themes within films. What comprises a film is important, and the theme or motives for characters within the film are also a force for why the film progresses the way it does. Story development. It's also important because it reminds you about the plot of the film and what separates the said film that you're watching from other films that you might have recently seen or in the past. Themes often reflect the times that the film is released in, and often they can be a driving force for why people go to the movies to begin with. Older films dealt with certain themes, from the 1970s to the 1990s, and the 2000s through the 2020s. Also dealt with various connecting themes. Social attitudes towards violence and masculinity. It can even be said that the action films of the 1980s and 1990s were too much in amount released within a said year, and eventually people became tired of them. Oversaturation of the market. As the Americans have said, it could be good for you, but too much of a good thing can also be bad for you. Those films had much adrenaline and testosterone. They were mostly or only for men or young boys at the time. As women have had an increasing voice in American cinemas as well as Hollywood, they've had to deal with changing social attitudes towards blood and gore and treatment of women within films. In the 1980s, within America, women were entering the workforce and had contraceptives that enabled them to pursue careers over family. And this made a lot of men insecure about their place within the country and among themselves. The films were pure masculinity and raw aggression, like Arnold and Sylvester, which struck a nerve with men, and most enjoyed the films in situations of quote-unquote manly triumph and conquest. However, once men had to accept the fact that women were a more vocal voice and force within the workplace and elsewhere, and having no choice but to deal with it, they no longer cared about action films, or at least how they were represented in the 1980s and 1990s, which is why the trend changed in terms of subject matter within films from the 2000s to roughly the 2020s. Irony. In Demolition Man, there were comments about the film that the future will be completely run by corporations, and the people would be too ignorant to do anything about it. We now live in the future that was warned about during various films of the 1980s and 1990s. Some have mentioned that the entire premise of action films from the 1970s through the 1990s about corruption by organizations or governments is toned down now because there is indeed corruption, and being reminded of it in film might bring some to consider action to change the situation that the general population might be in. Now such repetitive themes might be seen as problematic to those in power. Could anything be done about it? Yes, but would it? These are some of the reasons about what killed the action genre within American film.